What is the deepest station on the London Underground? Well, there are two ways of looking at this. What's the deepest below sea level, and what's the deepest below ground level? The deepest below sea level is Waterloo, specifically the Jubilee Line platforms, which are 26 metres below. But the deepest below ground level, and what tends to come up if you ask about the deepest station, is Hampstead. The platforms at Hampstead are not only on a deep-level tube line, but under Hampstead Hill. The distance from street level to platform is 58.5 metres, with the southbound platform being slightly deeper than the northbound. These days, Hampstead is on the Edgware branch of the Northern Line, but when it opened, it was on the Charing Cross, Euston and Hampstead Railway. This somewhat unwieldy title was often shortened to the Hampstead Railway, the Hampstead Tube, or the Hampstead Line. As you might have gathered, Hampstead was quite a significant destination. The Hampstead Tube was planned in the wake of the success of the City and South London Railway, which opened in 1890 as the first successful deep-level underground line. The success of the City and South London led promoters to devise a whole lot of other similar schemes. Many would fail, but the Hampstead was not one of them. It was originally planned as the Hampstead, St Pancras and Charing Cross Railway and was renamed in 1893, just before royal assent was given. It was intended to connect the mainline termini at Charing Cross, Euston and St Pancras, but also to give the northern suburbs their first tube line. Hampstead would have been the terminus. The problem was that building a tube line seemed like a great idea if you weren't the one paying for it. After the initial excitement, it turned out that it was basically impossible to get anyone in Britain to invest in the new tube schemes. Anyone in Britain. The promoters headed over to America to see if they could do any better there. So they met a man named Charles Tyson Yerkes, who has appeared so often on this channel that he's practically in the regular cast. Yerkes was a transport entrepreneur who had found doing business in America rather more difficult of late, due to unfavourable legislation and a lot of scrutiny of his, shall we say, not always clean methods of doing business. With tube proposals popping up all over the place, Yerkes sent representatives over to London to see how many of these were worth pursuing. They reported that from a financial and engineering standpoint, the Charing Cross, Euston and Hampstead had legs. He bought the company out in September 1900 at, appropriately enough, the Charing Cross Hotel. The Charing Cross, Euston and Hampstead Railway was now officially part of Underground Electric Railways of London Limited, or UERL as we shall say. While Yerkes might have been shifty, he knew what he was doing, and he began making alterations to the plan. Legend has it that he took a hansom cab out to the north of London beyond Hampstead, stopped it in the middle of nowhere and said that here was where his railway would terminate. It's a nice story, but there's no evidence it actually happened. Yerkes was the kind of larger-than-life character to whom these kinds of stories attach. The fact was that Hampstead was an inconvenient place for a terminus. To build a depot there would require gradients so steep that they would need to use cable haulage to power the trains. Terminating further out at what's now Golders Green would avoid this problem, but the extension was loudly opposed by residents of Hampstead who feared that the tube would ruin the beauty and tranquillity of Hampstead Heath. They also advanced the somewhat odd argument that the trains would vibrate the trees from out of the ground and the tunnels would drain the water. The railway's legal representative argued that this was nonsense, and if they didn't get their extension they'd have to plonk a power station down in the middle of Hampstead. Well, as we all know, the underground lads got their way and construction could begin. Not that building Hampstead was an easy matter. The extension meant that it would be deeper than originally planned. Digging there uncovered a number of unknown springs, causing workings to flood, which, of course, was gratifying to those who argued for the line draining water from the heath. Digging also uncovered 5 hitherto undiscovered fossil species, so that was nice. Hampstead Underground Station opened to the public on the 22nd of June 1907. The station building at Hampstead was designed by Leslie Green, whose signature style was a red-tiled frontage in a shade known as oxblood. Originally, the station name was shown in black lettering on the white bands, which you can still see today. The steepness of the hill resulted in a booking hall with entrances at 3 different levels. Tiling was also extensively used on the interior, green tiling at street level and distinct patterning at platform level. The platform tiles were common to UERL stations, and each station had its own pattern to ensure that regular commuters could instantly recognise their stop. Actually, much of the interior tiling at Hampstead is reproduction. A notable exception is here, where the original station name tiles have been kept. During the planning stages, Hampstead was known as Heath Street after one of the roads it sat on, but it was never actually called that in service. It's just that by the time the change was made, it was too late to go back. The station had 3 lift shafts, equipped with high-speed lifts. This was quite a lot for a relatively quiet suburb, but the depth of the station was such that they were necessary to avoid long waits. I should also mention that the station had its own signal cabin, which lasted until 1958. The station was popular from the outset, both with commuters and with visitors to the Heath. In 1910, a theatre service was offered from Golders Green and Hampstead, then non-stop to Tottenham Court Road. It was possible from 1911 to get a horse bus from Hampstead to Hendon. From 1913, fares to Hampstead were reduced in the hope of encouraging more people to live there. Less revenue in the short term, more in the long term. Despite the station's popularity and the respectability of the suburb it served, it was not served well by time. In the 1950s, new lift machinery necessitated the installation of a rather ugly structure on the roof, and the blocking of 2 of the semicircular windows. In the 1960s, the station's name was removed from the white band, leaving only the little sign above the main entrance to tell you what it was called. And the tiling was starting to look distinctly shabby, with that in the ticket hall having mostly been removed. In 1988, the tide turned for the station. The ticket hall's original finish was mostly restored. I say mostly because the rather attractive acanthus leaf pattern was not originally there. If you look at the surviving original tiles leading to the stairs, you can see that the border was originally plain. Still, I don't think anyone objects to the change. In 1998, the worn tiles at platform level were also replaced, with the aforementioned exception of the original station name. In 2014, the lifts were replaced again. Hampstead is a station with a fairly uneventful history, serving a respectable suburb. But of course, its story goes a little deeper than that. Well, I hope you enjoyed this bottomless tale from the tube. If you did, please do leave a like and consider subscribing for more. I would like as ever to thank my donors on Ko-fi, on Patreon and here on YouTube for your generous support. You are the extension to my tube line. And I'll see you all again very soon for another Tale from the Tube.